You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. Her name is Nancy Giere. She helps entrepreneurs turn their expertise into profitable online programs, a topic near and dear to our heart here at LifterLMS. And we're going to get into a lot of stuff because Nancy covers instructional design. She's a smart entrepreneur herself, and we're just going to kind of pull out as many tips and tricks and ideas to change your life and help you with your or your clients' online course goals. Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Well, thanks. I'm really happy to be here today.
I was listening to something on your website, and there was a message about change.
Yes.
And, you know, as a expert, subject matter expert, you know, in a job, maybe you dream of like starting your own business, having an online course, or maybe you're already an entrepreneur, but you want to, it's in a different kind of thing and you want to teach that and turn it into a course. There's like this change you have to go through as a person. What's kind of some counterintuitive advice or insights you have around change and how it helps entrepreneurs to actually break through and get momentum?
Well, you know, change is constant, right? And the environment that we're in and the circumstances around us are ever changing. And so we have the choice of, well, how do we lean into what's going on and make the most of our current circumstances? You know, and I think the best example is something that we've all just lived through is, so when the pandemic hit and people had to look at their businesses and say, well, what I've been doing up till now maybe isn't going to work so well, you know, particularly if somebody was speaking on stages all around the country. Well, there were no stages. So there needed to be a shift and go, well, what do I do to be able to deliver my best message in a virtual way? And how do I think about it from a real intentional point of view about what do I need to do to be effective in this new medium? A lot of people, I think, panicked, they rushed, they took a bunch of recordings, they put an intro and an outro on it and said, okay, now I have a course. Well, no, what you have is a recording. And there's nothing wrong with that, but promote it as such. And if you're thinking about a course or you're thinking about delivering on Zoom instead of on a stage, you have to look at what are the opportunities in this new form and what are the constraints and what can I do to show up in the best way possible so people see how brilliant I really am, instead of yet another recording. I think that's what's taken up all the bandwidth on the web these days. It's tons of recordings.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, we hear today the concept of like Zoom fatigue or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And people, I've noticed just as an online business person myself, less people are going to webinars and like these long presentations or whatever. So how do we create more engaging content, whether it's in our course or outside of it in our marketing? Like, how do we make it not just a recording?
Not just a recording. Well, not just a recording. Well, it's kind of funny. It's not just a recording, but it ends up being recorded. So, okay, we got to get out of this circular loop right away. There's several different ways to make something engagement. And one of the first ways and the simplest ways is to think about how can you change the scenes. If you watch anything from an entertainment point of view or a news point of view, the scenes are constantly changing. Now, not everybody is in a position where they can have a 3-camera shoot and have somebody, you know, at a mixer and putting it all together. But if you think about moving from being on camera to then having slides come up and invest in a tool like Ecamm, if you're on a Mac, where you can design scenes, where you could have a lower third pop up. Anytime something changes on the screen, that creates some level of interaction because it's like, oh, wait, what's happening? I mean, our brain is just tuned into that. The other part is, let's say if we're in the Zoom session, leverage more discussion and more breakout rooms. try to avoid being in this, telling mode all of the time. Several years ago, I was working with a client, and this was when everything was live. And they said to me, we want you to put together a course, and you can do anything you want but lecture. And that was a very tough thing to go through. I had to make everything discussion-based, everything discovery, learning. And it was like, it was every single module I was challenged. Okay, now how am I going to make this work? How am I going to make this work? So if you can have the courage to let your audience have some degree of control where they're involved in conversation, they're in a breakout room, you're asking them to put things into the chat, you're asking them for a thumbs up, you maybe looking for games that you can bring in, that's going to keep people interested, and to move away from, I'm just going to talk at you for an hour.
I love that. It's a dance, not a movie. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when you go into the evergreen space, then you want to look at, well, what's available to me, given whatever the platform that I'm on, what can I bring in and how can I break it up? And there it's, keeping your videos short and to the point, bringing in opportunities for personal reflection, giving people activities to do, kind of thinking about, they're starting here and I want to get them here. What do I have to do to close that gap? And how quickly can I get them to be doing something and not just watching and listening?
If somebody's trying to elevate their expertise and also kind of get past imposter syndrome and all that, how do they do that?
Wow. Well, the best way I think to get around imposter syndrome is just start to put yourself out there and realize that your message is unique to you. That, for example, there's a lot of people that are in the coaching space, but every coach has a different spin on how they're going to move people through their process and how they connect with people. So you want to kind of think about what can you look for where you can make a connection, have somebody really kind of see you as you are, so that they're going to want to engage with you. I think the other challenge, kind of tying back to Zoom fatigue, is it's not normal for us to look at ourselves all day. Right now we're talking, I can see you, but I can also see me. So I'm thinking about, is my hair okay? Is this okay? Is that okay? And I have to stop and not really think about that. If we were sitting in a room together, you'd be looking at me, I'd be looking at you. We wouldn't have this sense of, there's also a fear, I think, to be on camera. Somehow, if I shoot a video, am I going to get it right? Am I going to be okay? Is it going to be interesting enough? And really, we're in a point now where we all just have to get over it and just get on video. I'm planning to do a 12 days of tied to the 12 days of Christmas. So I've challenged myself to do a video a day for 12 days and get it out to my community. And it's just doing it and practicing. If you never put yourself out there, if you never practice, you can never improve. You can never get better if you don't take that first step.
That's awesome. How do we help the entrepreneurs with no teacher training do instructional design? I'm looking at your website, which is nancygiere.com. That's NancyGiere.com. And you have a resource called 8 Easy Steps to Create Training That Sells.
Yes.
How do we, give us some of the steps, or how do we kind of, if we don't know how to, chunk into something that people can consume in a course, how do we do that?
Okay. Well, the 8 Easy Steps is the high level process that I apply to every project that I work on, whether it's a solopreneur or a Fortune 50 company. The process is all the same. It's just the content and the complexity is what changes. Well, the first part is to think about who your audience is and what is the transformation that you can bring about. So to come up with this overarching statement about how your program is going to help somebody to change, kind of going back to where we were at the beginning. What's the change that's going to occur? Really get dialed in on that audience. What are their pain points? What are their problems? What are their challenges? Now, depending on the work that you do, one kind of clue is, are there things that you say over and over and over and over again that everybody you work with? There's a good chance that that's content that you could then extract and look at, well, now how can I organize this into into an online course. Once you're kind of dialed in on your audience and what they need, you want to kind of frame it and ask yourself the most important question, which is, by the end of this course, what are they going to be able to do? What are they going to know that they didn't know before? And how are they going to feel? And that kind of becomes your guiding light as you go through the whole process. Then the next step is to come up with an outline. And we're like doing instructional design in 30 seconds is to really think about an outline. So what is it that you want to cover? You can do some brainstorming on your topics, and then kind of get like, okay, here's everything that I need to address in order to get people to that place that I want to get them to. Come up and then think about, now, how do I sequence it? And then step back and go, now, what information here is really need to know versus nice to know? And your training, you want to focus on the need to know. One of the challenges that we have as experts is, I got a lot to say. So you have to think about, well, what belongs in a course and what might you want to deliver to people in another way, through articles or kind of bonus content, if you will. But you really want to think about the main road and then the side road. And then you want to bump that up against, well, what are your current assets that you have? So here's my list of topics. Here's some assets that I have that I can repurpose. And then you also have a clear picture of what you don't have in place. So you kind of know, you get a sense of the scope of how to build it. Then you step back and you go, okay, given all of this content, what's the best way to teach it? And that's where the fun comes in, where you think about, well, do I want to shoot a video here? Do I want to provide an interactive exercise? Am I going to incorporate a game or a quiz or whatever type of modality to bring the content to life? And then you're ready to start to build it all out. And the building can be challenging depending on kind of where people are and what their expertise is. Are you good with graphics? Are you good? Do you have a nice slide deck that you can leverage? Are you going to need somebody to do video editing? What type of graphic elements are you going to want to bring into the video? As I mentioned, I've been using Ecamm, which allows me to have the graphics come up while I'm recording, which saves time on the back end in terms of post-production. But then you may just want to have an editor come in and just do all of that for you. So that's like a real compressed kind of roadmap of how to get from end to end. And all along the way, really just being, there's instructional design, but I've coined the term intentional design in this work to really think about, given the delivery platform, what can I do to be the most effective and engaging?
Wow, that's awesome. Can you give us just a pro tip insight if somebody's like, let's say, working with a large company with some kind of training objective? What's an example you mentioned where it's the same process, there's just more complexity? Yes. What's an example of that complexity in this process?
I think oftentimes the complexity kind of ties into the content. So, for example, I did some work as part of a team for Eastman Chemical, and it was their supply chain management. That's a fairly involved process. There are lots of different departments that have to come into play. They were revamping the software that they were going to be using. So they were going from a series of spreadsheets to a brand new application. So there's a huge change management component because you've got a lot of people that they were content to a certain extent with the way that they were working. And now I'm going to have to put faith that this new software application is going to do for me what I did before and then some. So you've got like this, when you're saying like there's a wholesale change through a whole division of a company about how they're going to work, that gets to be very complicated, because even when change is a very positive thing and people can see, yeah, this is going to be good, there's a little bit of a but I'm used to doing it this other way, and I got to make the shift. So there's a whole like getting people on board and ready to move forward and feel good about where they're heading. So when you've got more people to train, cross-functional teams, that's where the complexity can come in.
That's awesome. I love what you said about the transformation. What do they want to know, do, and feel? Mm-hmm. And also like the transformation become, like, who do they want to become? That's that's just a really powerful forcing function to focus the outcome. Because
Yeah,
I know a lot of experts get wrapped up in, well, I know a lot of things, but if you really focus on the learner and those know, do, feel, become
right,
aspects, it
right.
becomes a lot more clear. What about story? I know that's big for you.
Hmm.
And on the topic of engagement, I was on your website and I saw a thing about, a chameleon can like blend in or they can stand out. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, that's cool. I was like getting into the story. I'm like, this is awesome. What kind of chameleon do you want to be? Uh,
Exactly.
Tell us about story, because I know we've all been around story, but not everybody's a great storyteller or realizes that they can use it in an online learning program or marketing or whatever. So yeah, take us to
Right.
school.
So, well, okay. So another way to look at a story is an example.
Okay.
So if I just gave you an example of what a complex training situation could be. And when you think about it, we all tell stories all the time. A lot of conversation is story. I'm telling you about what I just did, then you're going to add to it. And you're going to tell me about kind of how your life relates to my life. And we're just kind of, I feel like a lot of conversation is trading stories. And we've been, I think, wired into story from the very beginning of time. If you go way back into the day, think about cave paintings, where that was telling a story of the hunt. Or then you move forward in a lot of cathedrals, they had a visual storytelling. They had, that these are the lessons from the Bible that everybody needs to know. And it was all visual because a lot of people couldn't read. Then books come into play, people sitting around the fire and telling stories. People, today are sitting in bars and telling stories, family gatherings, everybody's telling a story. So everybody's got a story. But then we kind of go back to this imposter syndrome. Is my story going to be good enough? Is it going to be relatable? So a way to look at it when you're building out a training program is think about your clients and really get dialed into who they are and what their challenges have been and how you help them overcome them. So it comes back to the whole idea of the hero's journey. You've got the heroes working their way through, and then there's the guide that comes in. The Cinderella had the fairy godmother, here, I got the glass shoes, you're ready to go. And we as course creators, we're the guides. So what you want to do is put your content into context around what is life like for that person. So let's use sales training for an example. Sales is sales is sales is sales. There's a process, but if I'm selling one of my clients, his market is luxury home builders. Okay, the way that you sell a luxury home is different than a software application or a coaching program. So what you want to think about is, okay, how can I dig into who I've worked with, what they've done and what they've accomplished, and tell that story. And sometimes it's easier to tell somebody else's story than our own, because we feel like we're bragging, So
Very cool. Very cool. How about training for lead generation? Like, how do we think about learning as a tool for marketing?
I think it's one of the best tools that you can use, because what you're doing is you're giving people insight into who you are and what you can offer. And if you can put it out in it, whether it's a sort of in your marketing, in a drip marketing campaign, or oftentimes, the webinar is the lead gen. If I do a program about, I just did something about how to turn a book into an online course. So for me, that was a way I wanted to attract authors into my world, give them an opportunity to experience me, my teaching, kind of my personality more than anything else. Is like, I think she's fun, I want to work with her, or man, I don't resonate with her at all, I'm moving on. But that's all, it's all part of making the connection. I've worked with people in the past who've set up content around their business. So somebody who does e-commerce, for example, if they put how to run a few courses free, how to set up an e-commerce business, somebody's going to read that. And when they're ready, they'll go, you know what? I'm going to go talk to him because he spoke to me. I got that free information from him and I'm ready to hire him. And it just this morning, I know that I had somebody say, and I had sent something out, and she booked time with me. And my first question was, what prompted you to talk with me today? And she said, well, I've been thinking about creating a course for a while. And when I saw your email, I thought, yeah, it's time to talk. So it doesn't always happen immediately, but it's just this, it's a way to stay in front of people in a way that's more interesting than just read this document, read this article. If you come up with a little mini course, it can be a bit more fun.
That's awesome.
And memorable.
We do that at our software company. At LifterLMS, we have a free mini course about how to create your course really fast, and it's our largest lead generation
I'll bet.
course. What are some of the classic mistakes that you see? Because I see a lot of pain. I've been in this market for about 12 years, and I see a lot of failed dreams and projects that don't work out. There's a lot of great success out there too, but there's not enough attention put on the stories of what didn't work out. So what do you see are some mistakes that kind of cause failure either to launch or it launches and it doesn't work out?
Well, the one of the first mistakes that I see is people will think about, well, I'm going to put this course together, and they start like, oh, I'm going to write the introduction. And they think about it from end to end of what the experience is going to be like for the client, instead of stepping back and what I mentioned before about sort of what do you want them to do, know, and feel. Really, the whole idea of begin with the end in mind. Think about where you want to take people, then plan the journey. Because I liken it to, I was a big fan of Snoopy growing up. And when Snoopy was the author and he's on top of the doghouse and it was a dark and stormy night, a shot rang out. And then he's like, well, now I don't know where to go. And then people kind of get stuck, and it does, and it ends up, and they get frustrated because, well, why isn't this working? So you really want to kind of plan all your content out and then organize it into a logical flow with the idea of where am I going to take someone? That's the first mistake that I see. The second one is this desire to tell people everything you know, instead of really kind of, again, using that guideline that I've talked about, instead of stepping back and saying, what's the most critical information? What do they really need to be successful? And have that be what goes into the course. There's this desire to tell everybody everything because it's so exciting, and then but it can be too much. It can be overwhelming. Or think about how to put something into a series, but really being mindful of how much is enough to get people to where they need to go. So that's another problem. And it's just something flying in and out of my head. There's also this sense of my course will work for everyone, right? What product or service does somebody offer that you can really be effective when you say it works for everyone? So just like when you're doing your marketing, when you look at your training, you want to be niched so that you're going after a particular target market, which then leads you into what's the problem that you're going to solve for that market. So it's really, I think, the stepping back and taking a moment to plan instead of just, I'm just going to go. A little bit of planning, and I'm not talking about months. If you just took a week to plan, and then you'd be in much better shape, and you'd end up getting completed faster and getting to the success that you want faster too.
That's awesome. I want to talk about a blend of teaching methods, kind of like the dance versus a chopped up movie version of a course. So like on the low end, let's say there's like somebody has a $20, $30 go at your own pace course on Udemy or something like that. There's no real support or interaction. On the high end, there's a very immersive thing. There's a course, maybe there's group coaching, private coaching. There's live events that people fly out together to, and there's assignments and masterminds and all kinds of stuff. But without overwhelming, let's say, a newer expert or coach, what's like a kind of a starter bundle they could think about to create a course that comes with some kind of success system that's more than just the content? Like what could they do? And maybe we could use an example like somebody who's doing a certain kind of business coaching, like I help, real estate agents start and grow their businesses?
Okay. Well, I think the best way to start is to look at it from the angle of what is the kind of repetitive information and the real basic information. And to look at, extracting that and building out, a live program on Zoom or an evergreen program from that very basic information. And then take a look and say, well, how can I integrate this into my larger business model? So maybe you have there's the do-it-yourself path. Then if you have people that are working with you in a group, they get that content as well. I like to start things out thinking it from either the one-on-one perspective or the group and go, what do they need and how could I support this group? Because that's, if you're doing business coaching already, you've already got people in your universe. So then you step back and you say, okay, what can I provide them that will make our whole relationship more efficient in terms of me providing them guidance and also having something that the client can have as a reference point. We talked about marketing in that session. Let me go now and I can more like an on demand or as it's needed. Now let me go back and review. I'm ready to implement, but I don't remember everything that we talked about. So then they've got a place to go and look it up as opposed to having to ask a question. So it kind of comes down to best use of everybody's time, best use of the business coach in this example, and best use of the client too. They may decide like it's 8 o'clock on a Friday and I've got nothing else to do. So I'm going to do this, right?
Do you have any input on like pricing? I see a lot of people get hung up on like, well, what's it worth? And they just kind of, stick a finger in the air, look at what the
Yeah.
competitor's doing. And how do we think about pricing our training programs?
I've kind of come at looking at pricing from two perspectives. One is, so what's happening in the competitive space? And one challenge there is a lot of people that perhaps, are celebrity status and whatever the domain is, they may have a mailing list of 100,000 people. If you have 100,000 people on your list, if you sell something for $47, there's a good chance you're going to do very well, because just the law of numbers, you might get 10,000 people that are going to sign up. Hey, that's fantastic. So I think it's hard to compete. You've got to look at what the different factors are. I've started encouraging people to not only look at what their competitors are doing, but look at who else do your clients buy from for whatever the services might be. So let's say we've got the same client base. They're going to buy some things from me. They're going to buy some things from you. Well, if our price points are fairly close. So if I'm doing my investigation and I look at, okay, well, Chris is at 1,000, I can be at 1,000. Chris is at 50 for this. I should, so if they're willing to spend 1,000 with you, they should be willing to spend 1,000 with me, which is another way to come at it. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to where's the perceived value? If I invest 1,000 and am I going to make 10 off my $1,000 investment, or am I going to break even? I'm just going to break even. Maybe not. But if I have the chance to make 10, so I think it's putting it into that frame of, if you do this, this is what your revenue potential is, and to kind of have that as part of the conversation, and to be realistic in what's possible, and not overstate it. So I think some things are way overstated, and then that just leads to disappointment and day drinking. So
related to pricing, do you have any tips on recurring revenue around online learning programs as opposed to like one and done sales?
I think the recurring revenue membership sites, I think, are a great way to generate the recurring revenue. You need to be ready and be present to be continually giving people new content. Kind of can create a discipline that you're going to have something new every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever that cadence is going to be. The one and done is more of a I think a larger investment where it's a particular project that they want to complete. So I want to come up with my marketing strategy for 2023. So there's a workshop to go to in December that's going to help me get my strategy for 2023. I take that course. then I go in and I implement in 2023. That could be one example of a one and done. But then you could step back and say, well, then maybe they go from that into a membership or some ongoing support type of a program. So it all, I think, depends on the content and kind of what's the purpose of working through a particular type of content.
All right, shifting gears to technology.
Okay.
If we're creating online learning programs, you mentioned like eCam recorder and, editing, and there's all these things from hardware to software
Right.
to just all the tech required to pull it off. Any advice for people wanting to get into this in terms of how to think about the tech without getting overwhelmed?
Without getting crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing is invest in a good microphone.
Yeah.
So that you have good sound quality. People are not forgiving if sound is bad. If sound is bad, they're out. And then the next thing is to think about having a simple background. You've got a very nice virtual background. You just fit right in there. I have a background. I just got to move that because I just really have a light in there. That is very simple. It's just a picture behind me, not a lot of distraction. I can take that picture down and just have a plain white wall. You could use, I have a desk that allows me to stand or sit. You could also use, boxes to change the point of view. So I think those are some of the first things. And then think about, how the lighting is, how are you showing up in the frame? And you can buy expensive lights, or you can go to Home Depot, get lights. So I think some of it is just kind of setting up that, how are you going to look on screen? That's the first step. And then from here, phase one, start doing recording in Zoom and switch between being on camera and having slides. That's a good place to start and get comfortable, get in the rhythm of doing it. And then you can up your game. So for me, one of the next steps, I forgot to mention, you can start with the camera on your computer, but then maybe upgrade to having, like I have a Logitech Brio is what I'm using these days. Then, so kind of this like the basics, and then to just do things in Zoom and do the screen sharing. Kind of related to the tech, but not related to the tech is how are your graphics, how are your slides going to look? So consider investing in a graphic designer to come up with a nice branded template for you that you can then just work inside of, because it'll have a really nice look and feel for you. I made that investment early on, and it's been great. So then we get more into more technology, and there's all kinds of things out there that you can do. So I happen to be on a Mac, which is why I purchased eCam. If I had it all hooked up here, I could show it, but I'm not connected at this moment. But what that allows me to do is move between different types of visuals, different types of shots, and just by pushing a button, I can change the scenes that I'm in. So you can see me on camera, you can see me with a graphic overlay. I can have my slides come up, and I can be in a little window on the slide. So it just makes it a bit more interesting, and the learning curve isn't that steep. Then you can look at adding in, if you choose, the next level up would be bring in a Stream Deck, which then allows you to program this. So you just push a button to move from scene to scene to scene, and it's very seamless. What's great about doing this is you can put in production values like lower thirds, graphics. Maybe I could have, if I had this white wall behind me, I could have a list for like an agenda item or something, and you have it all programmed in. So then when you do your recording, all of that comes together fairly nicely. And then the amount of editing on the back end isn't as much, because the other side of it is then to really do post-production editing. And that's certainly, an option too. But I think, initially to keep it simple, because what's more important is how excited are you about what you're talking about? How engaging are you? Are you really, are you loving the camera? Are you really working the room? That's what's going to make a difference. Oftentimes, once the camera comes on, hello, my name is Nancy. I'm very happy to be here today. Right. And then, then from there, then it's, and this is more in your wheelhouse than mine, is then where you're going to put the content when you're ready to deliver.
Yeah. And I'll just throw out there, it just depends on what you're doing. If you're like super beginner, you don't have a website, there's hosted platforms like Kajabi, Teachable, Thinkific, things like that. And there's many more. But if you have a WordPress site, that's where we exist at LifterLMS. If you already have a WordPress site, you can add it and make courses and coaching programs and host them yourself. I want to kind of zoom out with kind of a final question. That's kind of a hard one, which is if we're talking to an expert and they got that passion, they had that middle of the night moment, or they were on vacation, they decided they're going to kind of come out from behind themselves and help around a certain topic or subject matter expertise, and they've figured out like the type of person they want to help. You mentioned helping book writers become course creators. Mm-hmm. So there's books. We can write books. We can create courses. We can do coaching programs. We can do consulting. We can do public speaking. And right. I know it probably depends on the personality of the person, but I do see some people get a little paralyzed because they're like, oh, I got to do all that. I'm working on my book, my course, trying to get speaking gigs. I'm doing coaching, and I have services too, and they just explode. If you could wave a magic wand, what path would you send somebody down, knowing that people can do it in different ways in terms of, stepping into their power as an expert and delivering their value to the world through these different mediums? And what order would you suggest if you could catch somebody at the beginning?
At the beginning, I think the first step is to come up with a great presentation in whatever way you're comfortable doing it. Most people are comfortable doing something like that live. So start there and then take a look at it, and then go next phase is to be on Zoom like we are now and do it live online and go, okay, this is what I did when I was in front of a room. This is what worked. These are the activities I brought people through. Now that I'm in this different platform, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to change to be effective here? And really get comfortable working in this environment. And then step back and say, all right, of this, what makes sense then to turn into something that's evergreen and extract that from it. And one thing that I think can be really a powerful shift for people is, get comfortable on Zoom, get comfortable presenting the content, and then look at it and how would I break it into more discrete modules and do another live version really with clear transitions from topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. Because what that does is it gives you the opportunity to have the energy of talking to a live audience. And then when you go to cut it into more discrete modules for evergreen, you've created the space for the editor instead of I'm going to just talk for 45 minutes. I think that is the easiest flow in, because it's important that you get more and more comfortable with your content. It's not that you've memorized something, but that you've embodied it in such a way that then you can speak to it, whether you're on a stage, whether you're live online or evergreen, because the reality as we continue on here is you're going to need to be able to come out with all three. But I think the easiest and the most natural for people is to start in front of a live audience.
Solid advice there. That's Nancy Giere. It's NancyGiere.com. What can they find at your website? Tell us how people can connect with you, and any, final words for the people.
Well, on the website, they can download my 8 easy steps to create training that sells, which is the whole framework of how I operate. And my email is out there, and my phone number's out there, so you can call me if you want. I'm home, ready to talk.
I love that, by the way, like not hiding behind the website or whatever. Like the connection is rare. So why not? If you're in the spirit of service, connect.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I love to talk. So it's not a problem. Then I've just written a book called Bundle Your Brilliance, Turn Your Expertise into High Profit Online Programs, Online Courses. And I'm just in the final phases, depending on the timing of all of this, in having it available on Amazon and through my website. That will be around the middle of January. January 10th is actually my stake in the ground that I set, where people can actually get the book, which then it expands on what's in the 8 easy steps.
That's awesome. And this podcast will likely be out after that. So go to Amazon now and look for Bundle Your Brilliance. Nancy, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You dropped so many knowledge bombs and hard-won lessons from all your experience. Thank you for being so generous and sharing with the community today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I enjoyed it.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMS Cast. Did you enjoy that episode? Tell your friends and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I've got a gift for you over at LifterLMS.com/gift. Go to LifterLMS.com/gift. Keep learning, keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next episode.